It's an almost unbelievable truth. Government wanted the legal right to lie to you. A Justice Department rule proposal would allow government agencies to lie about requests for government information. The government could tell you the documents you seek don't exist, even if they actually do exist. But our next guest said he'd do anything it took to block this, and apparently he succeeded. The Department of Justice told Iowa Senator Charles Grassley late today that it no longer plans to propose this rule. Delayed or dead, the rule. He joins us now. Senator Grassley, it's always a pleasure. Welcome back to Freedom Watch.
I'm glad to be back with you, and let's start with the president before he was sworn in saying he was going to have the most transparent administration ever. And of course, the law passed a long time ago called the Freedom of Information Act is one of the ways to make government more transparent. And with transparency, you get accountability. Now, you stated it very well. They were going to issue a regulation, and you know how we learned about this regulation was through the media. A regulation that basically did what you said, a license to lie. And when you got government right now at a low level of credibility, you'd think the last thing the government would want to do is put out a regulation that said it was all right for the government to lie to people when they applied under the Freedom of Information Act for a document, and the document existed, but for some reason or other, they didn't want that person to know about the document, and so it was okay to say, well, it just doesn't exist. So I'm glad that they withdrew it. There is a follow-up, though, that I think is going to be necessary.
What's that?
Because I think what they were trying to do was codify through this regulation, something that maybe they were doing anyway. So now we have to follow and see, are they going to still, without a regulation saying they can lie, still not be candid with people that make a request under the Freedom of Information Act?
Well, first, let me congratulate you. You're in the minority in the Senate, but you showed what one person with intellectual honesty and courage can do, and you almost single-handedly, a lot of Republicans and even some embarrassed Democrats agreed with you. The government should not be doing this, and you're right, and you got them to back down, and my hat is off to you, and I salute you. But I'm wondering about this, and I'm sure you're wondering about it as well. Do you think it's a coincidence that this regulation was proposed in the midst of the teeth-pulling that you and Darrell Issa and the House are going through trying to get the Fast and Furious documents from them? Stated differently, do you think they've been lying all along and they just wanted to give themselves the power, the lawful ability to do that retroactively?
I wouldn't connect the two because we're not trying to get information under the Freedom of Information Act. But you are right when you stated that they've been misleading through a lot of things. In fact, the person that answered our letter was not Holder. It was the Legislative Affairs Assistant Attorney General. He's the same one that answered some of our first letters after we made our initial inquiry on Fast and Furious back on January 31st. Some of those first answers have proven to be entirely false with the information that was given to us. And thank God that we've had whistleblowers and we've had subpoena power where we were able to show that there was false information given.
About 6 or 7 months ago, I asked you a question that I'm going to ask you now, and you answered it in a very diplomatic way. But there's been an avalanche of evidence that has come down since then. I asked you back in February, should Attorney General Holder resign, and you were the supreme diplomat in your answer. Are you ready to answer it with more certainty now, knowing what you know today that wasn't made available back in February?
Well, I'm not willing to call for resignation, but I think it's very, very obvious compared to when you first interviewed me that Holder knew more about this than what he told us, or he should have known more about it than what he told us based upon testimony we've had, based upon memos that we've had copies of going across his desk, other emails, and all this. It's sure for absolutely certain he knew about this a long time before May the 3rd when he testified to the House that he just learned about it a few weeks before.
Senator Chuck Grassley, it's a pleasure, sir. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Now a few items from our Freedom Files. Freedom Watch recently brought you the story of how the Justice Department was looking to update the Freedom of Information Act, called FIOA, a law that forces the government to release non-classified information to anybody upon request. The Justice Department wanted to amend the law by letting government agencies claim that some information that was being sought wasn't there, even if it was. They basically wanted government agencies to lie lawfully. The DOJ has since then backed off its effort, but now it is looking for new ways to undermine the intent of this law, such as requiring the person requesting the documents to determine exactly which government department holds the information being sought, making FOIA requests more expensive, and a new rule, you ready for this, that would let government agencies destroy records. Groups nationwide continue to shed light on the assault against the people's rights that these revisions would create. What is the DOJ afraid of? I thought they worked for us. Shouldn't we know what they're up to?